Mahmoud has asked me to talk about some of what's happening economically as a consequence of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Just a few minutes ago, here in the United States, President Biden announced that he is going to be halting all oil imports from the Russian Federation. This is something he has been pressed to do increasingly by growing bipartisan majorities of both the House and the Senate. And the fact that he's willing to do that is a sign of just how strongly the sentiment is in the United States for imposing economic pain on Putin and his government, because gas prices are already at highs we haven't seen in the United States for many years, and this will only make them higher. Russia ships us only 7% of our oil supply, but as we've learned once again in this episode in human history, all things are connected, and the global oil market is one. So there will be enormous repercussions throughout the world at a time when oil prices are already skyrocketing. The last I saw, we were talking about $130 a barrel or thereabouts. This is just one instance of what I see as what could be a real change in the global economy, a turning point from a time when economic cooperation was usually possible to a time when I think we're likely to see more and more economic conflict. I'm in favor of imposing all the economic pain on Putin and his cronies that we can. And indeed, I've written articles in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere in the past week or so explaining that I think Putin and his government should be expelled from the World Trade Organization. But at the same time, I think we need to take a bit of a longer look. We need to be mindful of the human consequences of these economic sanctions for real people in Russia who had nothing whatsoever to do with Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. And I think we need to be looking ahead to a way in which the proliferating use of economic sanctions can somehow be disciplined and proportionate, and not lead, as we've seen sometimes in the past, toward outright economic autarky and global protectionism. This concerns me, even as someone who is cheering on the imposition by the United States and its NATO allies and some others of these sanctions on Russia. In terms of what we're seeing already from the economic fallout, we can see that the consequences will not be limited to Russia or to the Ukraine. For example, Egypt depends on, for much of its grain, on imports from Russia. The prices of bread are very high already in Egypt, and they're likely to go much higher. Likewise, there's a reason why Ukraine has long been called the breadbasket of Europe. Its grain is shipped worldwide, but especially to some countries in the Middle East and in Northern Africa that are already facing hunger and higher food prices in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. I've already mentioned oil. There is also natural gas. I do believe that I saw that Putin, in retaliation, has ceased his exports of natural gas to Europe. As we know, the European Union depends for more than half of its energy on imports of oil and gas from the Russian Federation. It was therefore an act of courage for the German government and also of its fortitude in reversing policy last week and shutting down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Made a huge statement of the determination of not only Germany, but other European countries who are members of NATO to stand up against Putin's military aggression in Ukraine. Of course, we're already dealing with a world that has been massively disrupted by the pandemic economically. We've learned that there are some potential downsides to attenuated supply chains. We've learned a lot about where some of the ingredients in our high technology products come from. Here, for example, we've learned that the Boeing company depends on imports of titanium from Russia in order to be able to put its landing gear together on its large aircraft. And they're making some changes now that would reduce that dependency, although the Boeing company is continuing to maintain its relationship with its Russian partner, a company that's owned by a close colleague, Putin's. Interestingly, we've seen that even where there have not been sanctions, individual businesses, especially large corporations in many sectors, have simply stopped doing business with Russia and Russian companies. This is one more example of how uncertainty many times drives business decisions. Businesses want no more than certainty. They want to know that the contract will be fulfilled. They want to know that the rules won't be changed. They want to know that the products will be delivered. They want to know that the price won't go up beyond what they've contracted for, and so on. And all of these matters and others have been rendered uncertain by these circumstances. So we're likely to see a great deal of economic turmoil in the next few weeks, probably the next few months. An unknown is just how much the Russian economy can suffer in terms of contraction before it might make any difference, if any, in Putin's military decision-making. The latest projections that I've seen show a prediction that the Russian economy will contract by 10% this year. Of course, we have to consider what's happening in Ukraine as well, the victim here. It's unclear whether the farmers of Ukraine are going to be able to plant their spring crop. If they're not, and even if they do, if they're unable to reap it because of the war in their country, then that will have an even greater impact on world grain prices at the worst possible time coming out, we hope, of this pandemic. I don't think we have yet seen all the repercussions we will see economically from these events. Mahmoud, I'm going to stop there so as not to dominate the time. As I said at the outset, I'm eager to hear from these other two gentlemen, and I'll be happy to answer questions later if anyone has them. Thank you so much for inviting me.